Good morning, everyone. Today we're joined by Amadou Koné. And Professor Koné is a professor in the Department of French and Francophone Studies, also serves in our African Studies program here at Georgetown. He's an award-winning novelist, essayist, and playwright. He's been a member of our Georgetown community for a quarter century. So Amadou, thank you for taking the time to be with us for this conversation. Let's jump right in. Your expertise includes the oral literary tradition of Africa and its modern written literature. Among your publications is an anthology of literature from Côte d'Ivoire, the Ivory Coast. Could you share a little bit about your field of research, your own personal experience as a writer, and how it shapes your practices in the classroom?
All these things you have talked about are connected, of course. My research mainly is about oral tradition in Africa. That is a very large domain, because before colonization, African civilization was tradition oral. Everything was orality. We didn't write, at least in Africa, south of Sahara. So I believe that to really understand African literature, African culture, you have to study that tradition oral, because everything is included in tradition oral: literature, religion, science, philosophy. And I was interested not only in the content of tradition oral, but in the forms of literature in tradition oral. So everything was oral. And it is important to underline that, because if you want to understand even the modern literature, the written literature, you have to understand the structure of oral narrative. For instance, the critics have said, oh, African novel is not a good novel. And they talk about the characters, about the narration, the plot, and all these things. But I thought that to really understand and make a good interpretation of that novel, you need to understand what was the plot in oral tradition narrative, what was the conception of the character, for instance. And when you understand all that, you can understand why the modern writer is writing the way he is writing. And so the fact that I study the form of oral tradition allowed me to go back to the structure of the modern novel and to understand better and to understand the process of the modern writer. So that's why, and that is a large work finally, because that allow you to study the whole literature.
Sure. Oh, thank you. Now, you've also taught on African cinema and film, in cultural theories and political discourse. Last fall, you taught a course on African self-perceptions. What types of conversations did you and your students engage in? And in what ways might the oral literary tradition find new platforms and new technology and social media platforms?
Yeah, the courses, African self-perception, was important to me, because in the 19th century, we had some theory about Africa and some images. For instance, some images by Friedrich Hegel talking about Africa the continent of darkness, talking about Africans as barbaric, violent people, not aware of the existence of God. And this text by Hegel concentrate all these images, the negative images of Africa and African. And during the colonization, the colonizer developed this kind of images too. So we have an invention of Africa. We have Africa as it has been described by all these, the colonizer or some European philosopher of the 19th century. And so for me, talking about African perception with my student was very important, because that allowed me to go back to this problem, not to look at the images constructed by Europeans, but the image the Africans themselves are proposing. So the course was the reading of texts only written by African, by philosophers like Leopold Sédar Senghor, by traditionalists, specialists of traditional oral like Amadou Ampateba. And so we saw what the Africans are saying about what a person is, for instance, what the community is, what are the relationships between men, people in that. So my student could read this text and compare the images with the images coming from the foreigners. And we have talked about text, for instance, the Kuruka Fuga from Mali, a text from the 13th century, which is really an advanced constitution of the Empire of Mali, where they describe the laws, for instance, the importance of human life. The text begins by, any life is a life, and show the importance of the life and how it is precious and how we should save human. So that is that show how far we are from some description of Africa. And so my students were very, I believe, interested in that, in this kind of image and this kind of text. And since they are generally very good students, they could compare with what they knew, what they used to think about the images of Africa. And so that was important.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. In 2006, your play, Sigila Sigiya, with its English title, Vanishing to Be There at Last, had its global premiere here at Georgetown. Could you share a little bit about the play, reflect on your experience in seeing your work performed in our community?
Yeah, that was very good experience for me. The writing of the play was a problem because I was here and I was writing about the situation we had in my country, where we were in crisis and where maybe we would have a civil war. And so the public, the first public was there in Africa, but I was here and was writing, and I was expecting to be the play to be performed here at Georgetown. So the play is about inauguration. A prince is dead, and the elder have chosen another prince to replace him. And this prince is a modern person living in Paris. He came to the country with his wife, but the inauguration can't take place. Frustrated, said, well, we have to do this thing. If not, I'm going to leave. They couldn't do the inauguration is that something is missing, something they can't really find. And the elder they don't really remember what this thing is. They can't even remember the shape of the thing. They don't know even if it has a shape, you know. And of course, what at the end, finally, we know that what was missing is the knowledge of African culture, of our history, our philosophy, our social problems, you know. And so an elder, one of the elder who still know that tradition, explained all that. And finally, the problem was solved. And actually, the play talked about other things too, about, for instance, the civil wars. When the prince was hesitating, saying, well, if we can't do this inauguration, I am leaving, the country started collapsing. Some part of the country said, well, we don't want to be part of this country anymore. And so the civil war was not too far. And what is interesting is to see in this kind of situation what lead to civil war, because it is not only the ethnic that are fighting or struggling, but you have the importance, the weight of foreign power too. And so the play tried to talk about all these things.
Well, that's great.
It was a good experience because the play was directed by one of my colleagues, Dr. Bensky, and who is a good director.
Yes.
And the students were the actors, our students of the department. And I believe they did a very good job. Really.
That's terrific. That's terrific. Now, literature can be a source of comfort and inspiration. And as we've navigated the challenges of the pandemic, what works have you engaged with? And lately, what writing, what literature has been especially meaningful to you to reflect on and to enjoy?
Well, somebody, I believe it is a Nobel Prize winner, said that literature will save the world. I don't know, but it helps certainly people. And for me, it is really important. Literature is something that allowed me to reconciliate the different forces which are in myself. And when this pandemic started, the first thing was to reread some novel talking about pandemic, like the plague, for instance. And there is a good book by Albert Camus, The Plague. But after that, it seems that there was no need to read this kind of book. Literature, for me, is literature. Good books help a person to get to a balance. And I went back to some African books. An author I like very much, Amadou Kourouma, he is from Cote d'Ivoire also, and who has written about tradition, about the power traditional Africa, about civil war also, because it seems like an obsession, but that is something we are having very often in Africa. So I went back to this author, and another explanation for why I did that is that I am writing a book on Kuruma. So I read his books, and I was working on him. I am not through, but I hope I will complete that.
Well, you may have a little bit of time. I know that you're preparing to retire from teaching.
Yes.
So what's next for you? Is finishing the book part of what's next? Are there
Yes.
other projects you're looking forward to?
I have a lot of projects. Finish the book on Kuruma, finish a novel I have started writing, for instance. And I have other idea of novel, maybe a novel taking place in America, what I have not done since now. But there are some projects in cinema too. I have a novel which is being adapted in movie in Ivory Coast now, and some people interested in another novel. So I believe if I am in good health, that I will have a lot of things to do.
Well, we all look forward to the next work that you're able to share with us. And I just want to congratulate you on your upcoming retirement, to say how much we appreciate everything that you've meant to our community, everything you mean to our community. And we're really honored that this was your home for the last quarter century. And as we bring this conversation to a close, is there a message that you'd like to share with our community?
Well, I have to say first that it has been a privilege for me to work at Georgetown. To be in that institution and to appreciate your leadership, the work of your administration, the collegiality of my colleagues in the French department, in the African Study program, and of course, my work with my students. Right. The students of Georgetown are wonderful. And I taught in several universities, but I can say that I have a lot of satisfaction working at Georgetown in every level with everybody. And I hope I can come back sometime to visit. And I am really thankful for my life at Georgetown.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, again, Amadou, we're so grateful to you both for your long service and your many contributions to our Georgetown and our global community. And I want to thank you again for joining us in this conversation, and we wish you the very best as you move forward. And I look forward to being with all of you again soon. Take care of yourselves and take care of everyone around you. For every Hoya, everywhere.